It is a new month, which means that we have new vehicle sales data for the month of July. Which automakers saw sales growth, which automakers saw sales declines, and some of the factors that we think could be coming into play here in the next couple of months and how vehicle sales may trend as a result. Today, we're going to be talking about all of it, so let's get started. Now, as some of you may remember, the month of June was a wild ride for automakers due to the CDK outage, which crippled dealerships throughout the entire country and made it very difficult for dealerships to sell cars at the same pace they typically would during the end of month, end of quarter period of time. But it does look as though July brought some recovery for automakers and dealerships because sales grew by 0.5% in the month of July. Now let's talk about some of the specific winners and losers for the month of July whenever it comes to sales and delivery data. Now keep in mind that at the point in which I'm recording this video, not all manufacturers have released their data. We're still waiting from General Motors, and while I have seen some numbers floating around for Tesla, I haven't seen them reported from Tesla directly, so until we hear that from the horse's mouth, I'm going to be leaving those figures out of this video. But if between the time that I record this video, edit it, and publish it, if in that period of time these automakers do release their more up-to-date figures, I will make sure to insert them throughout this video. So first is the winners. Now there were some pretty big winners in the car market last month, but hands down the biggest winner came from Mazda of all brands. Mazda saw a whopping 30.2% increase in deliveries from July of 2023 to July of 2024. Now it is important to note that all things considered, Mazda is a relatively low volume manufacturer. They are not producing the same numbers as, say, Toyota, Ford, or General Motors. In fact, they aren't producing many of the same numbers as most major automakers out there. And while I think I have mentioned this in a video in the past, I'm going to be honest, I'm always a bit surprised to see how few vehicles Mazda produces compared to these other larger manufacturers. For comparison, Mazda North America sold 39,866 vehicles last month. Hyundai and Kia sold 138,976 vehicles, and Subaru sold 51,702 vehicles. The fact that Subaru sells more vehicles than Mazda I found to be very, very surprising because I feel like I see Mazdas everywhere. So all things considered, Mazda is a pretty low volume automaker, and there isn't a ton of other major automakers that produce less than them. Pretty surprising to me because I feel like I see Mazdas very frequently. But I digress. Again, Mazda saw an increase of 30.2% year-over-year in July with delivery data. Honda was also a winner, and they saw an 8% increase year-over-year. Since the pandemic, Honda has for the most part been a low-volume automaker. Even though they produce about 2.5 times more cars than, say, Mazda, when it comes down to vehicle supply, so the amount of cars Honda has available to sell in comparison to the demand for their cars, Honda has a very low supply. In fact, Honda is consistently in the bottom 3, with Toyota typically taking spot number 1, Honda in either spot number 2 or spot number 3, and they're typically flip-flopping back and forth with Lexus. So the fact that Honda did see an 8% year-over-year increase, that's a good thing. And the third winner that we have isn't a major winner, but we got to recognize the winners when we have them, and that is Subaru. And Subaru saw a 2.6% year-over-year increase with deliveries. Now, believe it or not, those are our winners. There's not a lot of them, because even though the car market as a whole did go up by 0.5% in July, there were a lot of automakers that saw delivery declines, and I think some of them and the amount in which they declined will surprise you. First is Ford. Ford is just barely a loser in the month of July, and they saw a 0.3% delivery decline. Not good, but not terrible either. Hyundai and Kia were another loser, seeing 3.3% sales decline year over year. Now, it is important to note that Hyundai and Kia is made up of Hyundai, Genesis, and Kia, so it's multiple brands under one umbrella. With the bulk of the negativity coming from Kia, who saw a whopping 10.4% decline year over year. Definitely not a good look from Kia. Genesis, which is Hyundai's luxury line, also saw delivery declines year over year, and so even though Hyundai as a brand saw strong growth, Kia and Genesis didn't, and they bogged down the brand as a whole. Volvo was also a big loser with an 11% decline, but to be honest, I would say that we had one automaker that was even a bigger loser, and this one may be surprising, but that is Toyota. Now, Toyota didn't see 11% declines. In fact, they saw a lot less, 5.1%. But for Toyota, that is really big because whenever we look at Toyota's data in recent years, really post-pandemic, or I should say post-car market crash, we have been seeing some pretty steady and good growth with Toyota. And so the fact that we didn't see that in July, it definitely isn't a good sign. This is especially not good considering the fact that Toyota has the Land Cruiser, they have the hot new Tacoma, they of course have their staple vehicles like the 4Runner and the RAV4, it makes you wonder if possibly Toyota's insanely high prices are finally catching up to the brand and people are deciding to go with a different brand with maybe a little bit more attractive pricing, like say Mazda or Hyundai, instead of going with something like Toyota where it is very, very expensive, the inventory isn't as great, and dealerships aren't as forthcoming to negotiate. Definitely makes you wonder. Now, even after all things are said and done, and even after the relatively hit or miss month of July, the new car market as a whole still saw 2% sales growth for the first half of 2024. But experts do believe that the second half of the year will bring slower growth and potentially declines for automakers and dealerships throughout the country. And I believe that July really gave us the first glimpse of these sales declines. And I think that there is some really solid evidence to suggest that the car market will in fact slow down and decline for the second half of the year. And I believe that we are beginning to see a glimpse of that last month in July. And I think the slowdowns could accelerate even more in Q3 and Q4. First, you have the Fed, which as of now has kept interest rates steady, not cutting rates, but also not raising them, which leaves us at the status quo in the situation where it is still incredibly expensive to borrow money for a car, which means that car affordability is still extremely high and cars across the board are just unaffordable to the average American. Because even though car prices are declining, the cost to buy a car is increasing because of those high interest rates and high monthly car payments. And while the Federal Reserve has indicated that rate cuts could come towards the end of the year, this brings a slew of other problems in and of itself. And while in many ways it will ease the affordability of a car because of the fact that interest rates will go down, this does spark fears of a potential recession. And this is a drum that I have been beating for a really long time. Our most recent jobs report was disappointing and unemployment rate has rose to 4.3%. And as I mentioned a moment ago, the Fed has signaled that rate cuts may be coming soon, which has sent the market and many people into a tizzy with fears that a recession will precede that, due to historical data showing that rate cuts oftentimes come before a recession. Now, I'm not going to pretend I'm an economist and I am an expert on when a recession will happen and how, because I'm not. But what I've been saying for a long, long time is that the math just isn't adding up with our current economic situation, and that the rise in consumer debt mixed with the higher cost of living just doesn't add up. So I am a full believer that a recession is going to be coming, and I think this will absolutely affect the car market as a whole. It'll cause for demand to plummet for these automakers for both new and used vehicles, and it will cause car prices to go down. But even a broken clock is twice once a day, and I also think that if somebody screams recession often enough, they're going to eventually be right. The point is, the data is showing that the car market is slowing, and if things keep trending like experts are predicting, the car market will slow even more. And I fully believe that we are beginning to see a glimpse of this in the delivery data from July. Brands that were once crushing it and seeing increases month over month are now starting to see some slowdowns. And while this absolutely isn't good news for dealerships or automakers, for the average consumer who's waiting for car prices to go down, this is exactly what many of us have been waiting for. Like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.